Could you please tell us your name and the official name of the building or property on the City of Salmon Arm's Heritage Register that you're associated with?
My name is Gary Brooke. In my past life, I was a director of the Salmar Community Association, which is the legal owner of the building located on Alexander Street, used to be Alexander Avenue, in Salmon Arm, which is, in recent memory, has been known as the Salmar Classic, which is actually the original Salmar Theatre.
And how long were you associated with the theatre?
I'm pretty sure it's 36 and a half years.
And what initially drew you to working with the board?
Well, I was invited to stand for election, but it appealed to me because I grew up just after just before the theatre was built. But as a young boy, a wee lad, I started going to the theatre probably before I was in school. I went every Saturday matinee. So for me and kids growing up in that area, it was the thing to do. There wasn't a lot to do. Well, there was a lot to do if you were motivated to do it yourself, but there wasn't much in the way of public entertainment. So it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And in your time working with the board, were there any changes made to the building?
Well, I was elected to the board in 1983, which was probably the most severe year of what in my view was the Great Recession. It lasted from 1981 to 1988. And the fortunes of the theatre were at a low point. So some of the younger new members of the board decided that rather than giving up on the business model of showing movies, that we should just make it a more attractive venue for public entertainment. And part of the thought process was converting the theater for use as a live theater as well as a movie theater, which involved ripping out about 35 seats, constructing a stage, installing lighting, proper sound equipment, acoustic equipment, and renovating the lobby and the concession area. So we did that, and we also made a point of promoting certain kinds of movies, like classic movies, Hitchcock movies, whatever. Anything to bring warm bodies into the seats. And it worked. Yeah. We held our own for a few years, but by the end of the decade, we were making decent money again.
Yeah, you see that kind of now too. They're showing old films a lot in theaters. I wonder if it's one of those things where there's a downturn in cinema attendance.
Yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting the next revival of cinema. Any month now it'll happen. I'm convinced of it.
Well, maybe with our American boycotts, we're all gonna leave Netflix behind.
Yeah, who knows?
Go back to the theaters. Anyway. Were there any other changes made to the property?
Well, there were changes made prior to my being on the board, which I became acquainted with later because there were structural issues involving the building, which had to be addressed. But I'm aware that in the 1970s, the association purchased, I think it was about 21 feet adjacent, because in those days things were measured in imperial terms, adjacent to the south boundary, and the theater building was expanded. And in fact, if you stand on Alexander now and look to the east, you can see the portion of the building on the left still has the theater structure. That's the part behind the culvert, the Quonset. But there's a whole separate part that's used for commercial rentals on the south side. And so the theater in the 1970s became quite a bit larger. The area of expansion now includes the lower level, which is the has been a food bank for the past 30 years, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because it's too bad we have to have food banks.
Yeah. Is that that's the part on the back, or?
Yep.
Okay.
It's my idea, actually.
What words of wisdom would you share with people thinking about, I guess, taking on responsibility for a building, or, yeah, a building like that?
Well, given the fact that the building is now 76 years old, it's a challenge for the association to keep it open.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of keeping it open in terms of the heating and lighting and staffing and so on it's got to the point where it's not a moneymaker anymore. I mean, I'm not privy to the finances of the association anymore, and it took a real hammering during COVID. Mm-hmm. My understanding is that it's broken even the last couple of years, but the plan appears to be to abandon the building, not just walk away from it, but to stop, just to leave it be until someone decides to buy it. Mm-hmm. Which, I got to say, as a hard-nosed business guy, I get it, but as a sentimental local guy, it's just a sad thing to contemplate.
Yeah, because they have the Grand Theatre now, and that's owned by the same association, yep. Correct? So, what was the logic of opening up that second one?
Keeping the big players out of town.
Okay.
And we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the Classic has just continued to operate after you had constructed the Grand for that nostalgic
well, no,
it
was operated at a profit,
mm-hmm.
modest profit, for years. We spent, I'm guessing now, I don't remember, maybe $200,000-300,000 renovating, upgrading, putting in digital projection equipment and sound systems. I mean, it's had a lot of money poured into it mm-hmm. to maintain it, and it was used as a fifth screen for many years. Mm-hmm. It's just been in recent times that it has shown its age to the point where only people who are nostalgic for the earlier years of film go there. Like, if you go to a Film Society presentation, just about everybody has gray hair. So it was a slow decline, but for many, many years it operated as a profit, and the association, being very, very motivated to make as much money as possible, invested money in it to make it appeal to the public, and it worked. Mm-hmm. Like I say, the COVID, more than anything else, killed the Classic. I mentioned this on another occasion, but what's unique about the Classic is that it provided an opportunity for this community to create a living memorial to people who had served in the Second World War. At the end of the First World War, there was the carnage was so great that there was a tendency to build religious monuments like cenotaphs. After the Second World War, there was a different attitude. People wanted to get on with things, and the thinking of the time was to create living monuments, and that was the thought in this community as all over the country. What was needed, it was identified very soon. In 1946, there was a meeting of local citizens who said, we need to build a living monument to honor our veterans. And after a bit of talk, the decision was made that what we really needed in town was a civic arena. Trouble is, nobody had any money. There was no money to do anything in those days. People were just through the war, and before that, the Great Depression. But that didn't stop the locals from saying, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll sell debentures and memberships, $25 a head, a lot of money in 1946. But they raised enough money and created enough volunteer labor and so on well, first off, they bought the old Rex Theatre, which was, in hindsight, a mistake because it was on its last legs. And when it became clear that the Rex wasn't going to work, and it was located on the other side of Alexander, just to the south, the decision was made to build a new theatre on a piece of land that had never had a building. And the construction was started in, I think, 47, 48 and finished in 49. Mm-hmm. And there are photographs that the museum has which show the workmen, they were all men in those days, who labored on it. A lot of them did it as volunteers. Mm-hmm. But it opened in May of 1949. And like I say, it was the most efficient and least expensive form of construction available at the time, which was a Kwanzaa structure, which has really stood the test of time very well. And between 1949 and 1957, virtually all of the money generated in that theatre was used to construct the Salmon Arm Memorial Arena, which, through another mistake of council, was renamed the Saskew Memorial Arena in about the year 2000. A real stupid move. I mean, just a huge insult to people who served in the war, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But you know, people have short memories. Yeah. I'll bet you if you asked 100 people in Salmon Arm about the old arena, maybe 5 of them would tell you that it was a memorial to the veterans from the war.
Or even the theater, too?
They don't know.
Yeah.
People forget.
Is there any sort of like signage in there?
You bet.
Okay.
I did it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a plaque in the arena and there's a identical plaque in the theater. Just short. Mm. But you know, it was a huge significant event because you know the theater, the association has pumped hundreds of thousands of dollars into the community, $100,000 into this building alone, over the years, and people kind of just thought, isn't that nice? So I lament the passing, the fact that the Salmar Association now has a very low profile. It really, at the time I joined the board, it was very high. Mm-hmm. That lasted right into the mid 2000s, 2010, 2015, because we were giving him money and building things, and we built the Legion building, for instance, and Salmar owns the Legion building. Yeah, so I mean, I'm exceptionally proud to have been part of that. Mm-hmm. And I do regret the passing of the classic, but it's the way of the world. Things come and they go.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just the building itself, it's the association. And
the association and the fact that Nelson has a community-owned theatre, thanks to the Salmar. Dauphin, Manitoba has one. Someplace else in BC, can't remember.
How did that come about?
Well, Nelson came about because I was looking in a menswear store for a shirt, and I asked the owner why the old theatre next door was closed down. And he said, well, the famous players Rodian decided it wasn't worth such a small market. And I said, oh, really? I said, how many people are here? He said, about 10,000. I said, well, you know, Salmon Arm has a community-owned theatre that was built when the population was about 3,500. And we're still going, and we're making tons of money. If you're interested, why don't you give us a call? And they did. They reopened it. Yeah. Nothing like a good idea. The best ideas are simple. Mm-hmm. Community capitalism. Our motto was in business for the community, and we were all very focused on maximizing income while being a good employer.
Mm-hmm. And the money went back into the community?
All of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's great. If you had one word to describe the Salmar Classic, what would it be?
Unique. Special.
And as of today, there's one more showing of that the Film Association is doing there.
Saturday, I think it's I think the last Film Society showing of the season will happen Saturday. My understanding is that they will be moving to the Grand in the fall. Mm-hmm. And the Grand is a much better theater, technically. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't have the same
feel.
Yeah. But it's just, the picture quality and the acoustics at the Classic are better than they were when it opened. Mm-hmm. But you almost need binoculars when you sit at the back because the screen's so small.
You should sell opera glasses. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.